Good evening, and welcome back to another episode of Boring History for Sleep, where we explore fascinating historical periods. Tonight, we're traveling to late 17th century France, a time of radical political upheaval, guillotines, and bread shortages. The French Revolution might seem romantic in textbooks, but the reality is, you probably wouldn't survive more than a single day in revolutionary France. Before you drift off, if you truly find these historical bedtime stories helpful, consider gently tapping that like button and subscribing. I'd love to know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's always comforting to see our sleepy history community growing. Now, adjust your pillows, dim your lights, and perhaps turn on that fan for some gentle white noise. Let's journey together through the cobblestone streets of 1790s Paris as we explore why daily life during the French Revolution was so drastically different from our modern comforts. Welcome to revolutionary France, 1793, where liberty, equality, and fraternity somehow still includes waking up covered in fleas. You open your eyes in a cramped Parisian apartment, and trust me, you'll be wishing you hadn't. This isn't the romantic city of lights you've swooned over in travel, blogs, and period dramas. This is Paris during the Reign of Terror, where the only thing more revolting than the politics is the personal hygiene. So what time is it where you are? Probably somewhere with electricity and indoor plumbing. Well, forget all that. It's barely 5 a.m. in your squalid revolutionary Paris dwelling, and you've been jolted awake by the piercing sound of church bells. What's left of them after zealous revolutionaries melted many down for cannons and currency? The National Convention decreed church bells unnecessary in 1793. The room is frigid because insulation hasn't been invented yet, and the only heat source is a pathetic excuse for a fireplace that does more to fill your lungs with smoke than warm your shivering body. Your bed is a lumpy straw mattress, resting on rope supports that needs tightening, weakly hence the phrase sleep tight, and it's teeming with so much microscopic wildlife that it qualifies as its own ecosystem. The sheets, if you're fortunate enough to have them, were last washed during the monarchy. That musty, acrid smell permeating everything? That's you, your roommates, your neighbors, and basically everyone in this city of roughly 600 unwashed bodies. Personal hygiene is considered dangerous. Physicians genuinely believe that water opens pores and allows disease to enter, so most Parisians bathe maybe once a season, if that. You stretch and feel something crawling across your scalp. Congratulations on meeting your first bedbug of the day. He won't be lonely for long. Your hair is a thriving metropolis of lice, and your body is a veritable apartment complex for fleas. You'll spend approximately 17% of your waking hours scratching yourself like a mangy street dog, and no one will find this unusual. Scratching is the national pastime in a country where even the affluent are crawling with parasites. The air in your room is thick with the stench of unwashed bodies, old food, and the chamber pot in the corner that's been festering since yesterday because emptying it requires going downstairs, outside, and to the nearest Cespetan adventure no one wants before dawn. The pot contains your nighttime evacuations, which, due to your diet of mostly bread and questionable vegetables, would horrify a modern gastroenterologist. If this sounds bad, know that you're actually among the fortunate in revolutionary Paris. Many citizens slept on dank cellars, floors, in doorways, or packed 10 to a room in tenements where diseases spread faster than revolutionary pamphlets. Approximately 1/3 of Parisians lived in absolutely desperate poverty, with the average working-class person spending 97% of their income on food alone, mainly bread. which rose to catastrophic prices following poor harvests in 1789, helping trigger the revolution itself. And that loud rumbling you hear isn't thunder, it's your stomach, reminding you that food scarcity is a constant companion in revolutionary France. Time to get up and join the breadline that's already forming, because nothing says liberated citizen like fighting your compatriots for a loaf of bread that's 50% sawdust. But first, you'll need to get dressed for this brave new world. Let them eat cake, Marie Antoinette supposedly said, but this morning you'd settle for clean underwear. Too bad. In revolutionary France, your clothing options make a Spirit Halloween clearance sale look like Paris Fashion Week. You roll out of bed and immediately step into something wet. Is it water from a leaky roof? A spill from last night's watery gruel? Or did your roommate miss the chamber pot in the darkness? The mystery puddle is just the beginning of your sartorial nightmare. Your feet are calloused from walking on cobblestones in paper-thin shoes. Your toenails have never been trimmed properly, and the space between your toes harbors a fungal civilization that would fascinate modern dermatologists. Time to get dressed. But don't expect a hot shower first or any shower. Or deodorant. Or toothpaste. The wealthy occasionally clean their teeth with a mixture of burnt bread, salt, and herbs, but you'll make do with rubbing them with a cloth. Or, if you're fancy, a chewed stick. Your breath smells like something died in your mouth, and given the state of 18th century dental care, something probably did. Nearly everyone has black, rotting teeth, swollen gums, and oral abscesses that make each bite of food an adventure in pain management. Your wardrobe consists of exactly 2 outfits. The one you wore yesterday and will wear today, and tomorrow, and next week, and the one that's somehow even worse. For men, it's rough linen shirts, wool breeches that haven't been washed in months, and a vest and jacket that have absorbed years of sweat, food stains, and that special revolutionary French body odor. For women, it's a chemise, a loose linen undergarment, stays, a supportive undergarment that's not quite a corset for working women, a heavy woolen skirt that sweeps the filthy streets, and a bodice that hasn't been properly cleaned since the Bastille fell. Speaking of underwear, Hope, you enjoy going mostly commando. Undergarments are minimal, rarely changed, and breeding grounds for lice so comfortable they're practically paying rent. The revolutionary concept of drawers or underpants is still considered somewhat scandalous for women, and men's undergarments are basically just extensions of their shirts tucked between their legs. The fabric is rough, the seams rub your skin raw, and everything itches constantly. That's not political fervor making you fidget during speeches in the public square. It's your entire epidermis rebelling against your clothing. The wealthy could afford occasional clothing, cleaning, and changes of attire, but following the revolution's anti-aristocratic fervor, dressing too finely could literally get your head chopped off. The sans-culottes militants of the working class, whose name literally means without knee breeches, embraced their rough attire as a political statement against aristocratic fashion. Their uniform of long trousers, instead of knee breeches, practical jackets, red liberty caps, and tricolour cockades became emblematic of revolutionary zeal. Dress too well, and you're suspected of counter-revolutionary sympathies. Dress too poorly, and you simply blend in with the masses of desperate Parisians. In 1794, during the height of the Terror, even the mere possession of white fabric could be suspicious, as it might indicate royalist sympathies. Revolutionary dress codes weren't just fashion, they were survival strategies. The Committee of Public Safety, led by Robespierre, even tried to institute a national costume to embody revolutionary values, though thankfully for you, this particular plan never fully materialized. Once dressed in your revolutionary finest, which smells like a combination of body odor, mildew, and fear you're ready to venture downstairs. Your shoes are poorly fitted, probably inherited, and have been repaired so many times they're more patch than original material. They offer minimal protection from the streets, which, as you're about to discover, constitute one of history's most impressive public health hazards. Hope you've tied those laces tight, because you're about to wade through the cesspool that is revolutionary Paris at street level. The streets of revolutionary Paris where the guillotine isn't even the most terrifying thing you'll encounter. Welcome to the world's first open-air sewage theme park, now with extra rats. As you step outside, a wave of stench hits you with such force it should qualify as assault with a deadly weapon. The Seine Riverance, described by Benjamin Franklin as too thick to drink, too thin to plow, serves as both water source and toilet for the entire city. The smell is a symphony of rotting garbage, human waste, animal carcasses, and that special something that can only be described as 600 people without access to showers. If you're wondering why everyone carries pomanders or scented handkerchiefs, it's not fashion, it's survival. The street beneath your feet is a hazardous geological formation of mud, horse manure, human excrement, food waste, and whatever else has been tossed out of windows. There's no sidewalk, just a central gutter where all this magnificent filth collects into a river of revolting sludge. The lucky streets have paving stones that rise slightly above this cesspool. Most are just dirt paths becoming progressively more organic. Your ankles disappear into this mess with every step, and you'll be finding unidentifiable substances in your shoe buckles for weeks. Watch out for that splash. The cry of "Gardez l'eau," watch out for the water, gives you approximately half a second to dodge before someone empties their chamber pot from a window above. If you're lucky, it's just urine. If you're not, well, there's a reason people wear hats. This charming practice was theoretically banned in Paris decades earlier, but enforcement is about as effective as asking politely for Robespierre to calm down a bit. The streets are narrow, many, barely wide enough for two people to pass without sharing fleason buildings lean precariously toward each other, blocking what little sunlight might penetrate the city's perpetual cloud of smoke and stench. The lack of sunlight isn't just depressing, it's a public health catastrophe in a time when vitamin D deficiency is less a medical condition and more a way of life. Rickets, with its characteristic bowed legs and deformed bones, is so common among the poor that it's barely noticed. Animals roam freely, adding their contributions to the biological warfare experiment that is the street. Stray dogs, chickens, goats, and the occasional pig serve as the city's primary sanitation department, consuming whatever edible waste they can find. The rats, however, are the true ruling class of revolutionary Paris, fat, fearless, and numerous enough to stage their own uprising if they could just settle on a manifesto. They carry fleas harboring bubonic plague, typhus, and other delightful diseases that periodically thin the human population with democratic indifference to social status. Despite multiple royal edicts throughout the 18th century attempting to address sanitation, including a 1780 order requiring homeowners to sweep in front of their properties, and a ban on throwing waste into streets, Paris remained catastrophically filthy during the revolutionary period. The city's ancient sewer system dating back to 1200 covered less than 13 miles by 1790, serving a city of nearly 20 square miles. Most waste simply accumulated until rain washed it into the Seine, the same river providing drinking water downstream. But hey, look on the bright side at least. All this filth is egalitarian. The revolution may not have delivered on all its promises of equality, but when it comes to typhoid, fever, and cholera, everyone gets an equal opportunity to die horribly. Now, let's navigate this biohazard labyrinth toward the bakery, where your daily bread awaits, assuming there is any. Hope you brought your patience and elbows, because the bread riot is about to begin. You've arrived at the bakery queue, which stretches longer than Robespierre's list of enemies. Congratulations! You're now part of a timeless Parisian tradition, fighting over bread like it's the last lifeboat on the Titanic. The line formed before Dawner, writhing, malodorous snake of humanity, united by hunger and the shared delusion that there will be enough bread for everyone. Spoiler alert, there won't be. The women around you for bread queues are primarily female domain, shave the gaunt, hollow-eyed look of people who've been surviving on rumor and spite for months. These are the infamous Poissard Market women who were instrumental in the October days of 1789 when they marched to Versailles to demand bread from the king himself. Cross them at your peril. They're known to strip aristocratic women naked in the street when food prices rise. La famine, someone shouts, and the crowd ripples with tension. C'est la faute des accapareurs. Another voice accuses hoarder speculators who allegedly buy up grain to drive prices higher. The revolutionary government has responded to such accusations with the law of suspects, September 1793, which makes hoarding a crime punishable by death. Now merchants are too terrified to stock supplies, making actual shortages worse. It's economic policy written in crayon and enforced with a guillotine. After 2 hours of standing in a miasma of body odor, anxiety, and revolutionary fervor, you finally reach the front of the line. The available bread looks like it was baked by someone who heard about bread second-hand. It's dense as a brick, grey as a winter sky, and about as appetizing as licking the cobblestones. Due to grain shortages, bakers have supplemented wheat flour with whatever they can find: ground beans, potatoes, chestnuts, sawdust, chalk, and during the worst shortages ground bones from cemeteries. Still hungry? The bread costs nearly a day's wages, but you pay without complaint because the alternative is starvationer, being denounced as an enemy of the revolution for questioning the price. The maximum price law of 1793 supposedly controls food costs, but like most revolutionary policies, it works better in speeches than in practice. You tuck your precious loaf under your arm, holding it like a newborn. Unlike a baby, however, you plan to eat it later. If you're wondering about breakfast alternatives, let me introduce you to the delights of revolutionary French cuisine. The poor subsisted largely on super watery concoction generously defined as food, only because it occasionally contained food-adjacent substances. Vegetables were seasonal, meat was rare for the common people, and coffee once available became scarce due to British naval blockades. The revolutionary substitute for coffee was roasted barley, which tastes exactly as appetizing as it sounds. For the wealthy, those who hadn't yet been executed for their good fortune breakfast might include chocolate, though drinking it publicly became politically dangerous as luxury foods were associated with aristocratic decadence. Better to drink your chicory coffee with a grimace and loudly proclaim how delicious revolutionary austerity tastes. The Committee of Public Safety is watching, and they're not known for their sense of humor. Hunger was not merely uncomfortable in revolutionary Paris, it was political dynamite. The bread question was central to revolutionary politics, with government price controls, grain requisitions, and the constant threat of popular insurrection creating a perpetual crisis. The revolutionary government responded by establishing the first modern food rationing system in 1793, with citizens receiving bread cards that entitled them to purchase a specific amount, usually about £1 per day, when available. This system directly linked daily survival to political identity, as cards could be revoked from enemies of the Republic. With your dubious loaf secured, you chew a piece as you walk it like masticating moistened sawdust, with the occasional unexpected crunch that's best not analyzed too closely. Every bite requires Olympic-level jaw strength, and your already compromised teeth scream in protest. But this meager sustenance is what will power you through a day of revolutionary fervor, back-breaking labor, or simply trying not to attract the attention of authorities. Now, with something approximating nutrition in your stomach, it's time to address the day's hygiene requirements, or rather, studiously avoid them like any self-respecting citizen of 1793. Your body odor is about to become a weapon of mass disgust. Ready for a productive day of revolutionary labor? Too bad your workplace makes an Amazon warehouse look like a day spa. Whether you're a craftsman in a workshop, a market vendor, or an unskilled laborer, your workday begins at dawn and ends when darkness makes it physically impossible to continue approximately 14 hours during summer months. The concept of weekends won't be invented for another century, and while Sunday was traditionally for church, the revolutionary calendar introduced in 1793 gives you 1 day of rest every 10 days instead of every 7. Progress. If you're lucky enough to have a skilled trade, you've likely spent years as an apprentice, living in your master's home, working for nothing but room and board while learning to be a carpenter, stonemason, tailor, or other artisan. Now, as a journeyman, you earn barely enough to survive when work is available. The revolution has disrupted traditional guild structures, theoretically freeing the market but practically causing economic chaos. The Le Chapelier Law of 1791 banned worker organizations, meaning any attempt to collectively bargain for better conditions could land you in front of a revolutionary tribunal. Freedom. Your workshop is a symphony of respiratory hazards. No OSHA, no ventilation requirements, and no understanding of occupational diseases means you're freely inhaling whatever your trade produces: wood dust, metal filings, textile fibers, or chemical fumes. The average workshop ceiling is so low you could touch it if your hands weren't busy trying to avoid being mangled by primitive machinery. Light comes from narrow windows and, if your employer is exceptionally generous, a few expensive tallow candles that fill the room with greasy smoke and the aroma of rendered animal fat. Maybe you're employed in one of Paris's early factories, perhaps the Réveillon wallpaper factory, site of infamous riots in 1789 that foreshadowed the revolution. Congratulations on working in what is essentially a giant tinderbox filled with flammable materials, inadequate exits, and no fire safety measures. Approximately 1/3 of Paris workers were employed in textile production, spinning, weaving, and dyeing, which meant daily exposure to caustic chemicals, cloth, dust, and machinery that could claim fingers faster than the Committee of Public Safety claimed heads. If you're a woman, your employment options are even more delightful. You might be a laundress, spending hours knee-deep in freezing Seine water, scrubbing clothes with lye soap so caustic it gradually dissolves your skin. Your hands are perpetually raw, cracked, and bleeding. Or perhaps you're one of the 20 domestic servants in Paris, working 18-hour days at the whim of employers who might now be terrified of being denounced as aristocrats. The revolution's promise of liberty conveniently excluded actual labor reforms for women. For those without specialized skills, daily labor means hauling goods, digging, or construction backbreaking work that pays barely enough for that delicious sawdust bread. By age 30, your body has the structural integrity of a damp baguette. Your knees sound like a bag of rocks being shaken by a confused revolutionary. Your back feels like it's being stabbed by tiny guillotines. And those mysterious pains in your joints are just part of the aging process, which in revolutionary France happens at approximately triple speed. The most striking aspect of revolutionary-era labor was its physical toll. The average Parisian worker in 1793 stood several inches shorter than their modern counterpart due to childhood malnutrition. Skeletal analysis of period burial sites reveals severe arthritis in people as young as 20, vertebral deformities from carrying heavy loads from childhood, and bones showing evidence of multiple poorly healed fractures. Workers in certain industries, particularly those using mercury, lead, or arsenic, common in hat making, printing, and painting, displayed characteristic signs of chronic poisoning, though no one understood the connection yet. During work hours, you might hear the distant rumble of drums announcing another execution procession headed to the guillotine in the Place de la Révolution, formerly Place Louis XV, now Place de la Concorde. You pause momentarily, wondering if it's someone you know, then quickly resume working before your revolutionary fervor is questioned. The guillotine has been working overtime since the law of suspects passed, and attendance at executions is practically mandatory to demonstrate proper revolutionary spirit. Nothing says liberty quite like mandatory attendance at death spectacles. With the workday half done and your body already screaming in protest, it's time for your midday mealer culinary experience that makes your morning bread seem like haute cuisine by comparison. Hope you save some of that brick-like loaf, because lunch adds little more than perhaps an onion, some cheese so hard it could be used as a revolutionary weapon, or if you're extraordinarily fortunate, a thin soup containing the vague memory of meat. Bon appétit, citizen! After your sumptuous midday feast of stale bread and regret, it's time to return to work, but wait. The sound of a commotion draws your attention to the street. A crowd is gathering, and in revolutionary Paris, crowds are never just innocent bystanders. They're participants in the ongoing political theatre where the price of a bad review is your head. Aristocrate, traitor, the crowd has found today's entertainmenter, well-dressed man being dragged from his home by the local sans-culottes vigilance committee. His crime? Perhaps he spoke against the latest decree from the convention. Maybe he was overheard criticizing bread prices. Or possibly he just had cleaner clothes than his neighbors. In 1793, that's enough to earn a denunciation. The revolutionary surveillance network would impress the Stasi. Every section of Paris has its committee of surveillance, zealous neighborhood watchdogs who meet nightly to receive denunciations and issue arrest warrants. Your landlady, your co-worker, that child playing in the street hall, potential informants. The law of suspects is so beautifully vague that virtually anyone can be arrested for anything that might suggest counter-revolutionary tendencies. Did you fail to attend your section assembly? Suspicious. Not displaying a tricolor cockade? Suspicious. Looking sad when someone mentions Robespierre? Extremely suspicious. You quickly join the crowd, staying silent would be suspicious, and watch as the unfortunate citizen is hauled away to the section committee for questioning. If he's lucky, he'll merely be imprisoned indefinitely, in conditions that make your flea-ridden apartment look like the Palace of Versailles. If not, he'll join the estimated 16 people officially executed during the terror, plus another 10 who died in prison without trial. But don't worry, this is all perfectly legal, according to the law of 22 Prairial, June 10, 1794, which helpfully eliminated bothersome legal procedures like evidence and defense witnesses. With the afternoon's impromptu civic participation complete, you return to work, scratching at the flea bites that have been multiplying since morning. Your little parasitic friends have been busily feasting on your blood while you watch someone get arrested for having the wrong facial expression during a patriotic song. The itching is maddening, but scratching through layers of filthy clothing only spreads the problem and adds infected sores to your collection of bodily complaints. Speaking of bodily complaints, that rumbling in your lower intestines, suggests that the questionable bread from this morning is staging its own little revolution. Public facilities? That's adorable. You have 3 options. Hold it until you get home. Good luck. Find an alley, watch for patrols, or use a public cesspit if you're near one, and don't mind the audience. Public hygiene infrastructure is still a century away, and the few public toilets that exist are essentially just holes over open pits that haven't been emptied since the monarchy fell. The afternoon drags on, punctuated by the church bells marking time, though many have been silent since the de-Christianization campaign began in earnest. The revolutionary government is currently attempting to remake everything from the calendar, 12 newly named months of 30 days each, to the clock, a decimal time system dividing the day into 10 hours. Even time itself must be revolutionary. The new calendar gives poetic names to each day today might be carrot, manure, or horse, instead of traditional saints' days, but somehow having Tuesday renamed turnip doesn't make your labor any less crushing. By mid-afternoon, Paris reaches its most fragrant state as the day's heat activates every odor the city has to offer. The stench from the overcrowded cemeteries, particularly the Innocents, which has been receiving Paris's dead for nearly 10 centuries, mingles with the reek of tanneries, slaughterhouses, and open sewers. The miasma is so thick you could sculpt it, and contemporary science believes this bad air is actually what causes disease, which isn't entirely wrong, given what's floating around in it. As the workday finally winds toward conclusion, your body aches, your stomach growls, and your head pounds from the combined effects of dehydration, malnutrition, and trying to keep your political opinions adequately revolutionary. You've produced your day's labor, but your pay barely covers subsistence if you're paid in actual currency rather than increasingly worthless assignats, the revolutionary paper money backed by confiscated church lands. By 1794, these notes had lost 67% of their face value, making your already meager wages worth even less. Exhausted and hungry, you prepare to leave work and face the evening in revolutionary Paris, time when political assemblies, public denunciations, and mandatory civic celebrations compete with your desperate need for rest. But first, you might want to check whether your name has appeared on any lists while you were working. In the Republic of Virtue, leisure time is just another opportunity to prove your revolutionary commitment or lose your head trying. As the workday finally ends, you might think it's time to relax and enjoy some well-earned leisure. Oh, you sweet summer monarchist! In revolutionary Paris, your evening options include mandatory political meetings, state-sponsored festivals celebrating obscure revolutionary virtues, or sitting in your fetid apartment hoping no one notices you exist. Choose wisely. The streets are filling with people heading home or to their section assemblies, the local political meetings where revolutionary fervor is measured by volume and radical posturing. Paris has been carved into 48 sections, each with its own assembly, committee, and militia. Think of them as neighborhood associations with the power to arrest, imprison, and execute you for having the wrong opinions about gardening. You should probably attend tonight's section meeting, because absence is noted and suspicious. Besides, they're providing free entertainment in the form of watching your neighbors denounce each other for insufficient patriotism. The meetings are held in repurposed churches, now temples of reason, since the de-Christianization campaign began turning houses of worship into civic centers. The saints have been chiseled off the walls, the relics removed, and a Statue of Liberty installed where the altar once stood. Progress smells like sweat, anxiety, and the lingering incense of centuries. The meeting room is packed tighter than the Paris prisons, which is impressive considering those facilities currently hold 3 times their intended capacity. The air is thick with tobacco smoke, body odor, and revolutionary rhetoric. Men in rough working clothes and red liberty caps dominate the front rows. While women are relegated to the galeries, the revolution may have declared equality, but somehow that principle never quite reached gender relations. Tonight's agenda includes a reading of the latest decrees from the convention, a report from the local committee of surveillance, and a mandatory collection for war support. The speaker, a local sans-culotte leader with a voice that could strip paint, is denouncing hoarders, speculators, and anyone who fails to display adequate enthusiasm for the latest policy reversals. The crowd punctuates his speech with cries of "À la lanterne," a cheerful suggestion to hang enemies from the nearest lamppost. You notice your neighbor Pierre isn't shouting along with sufficient enthusiasm. This is concerning, as yesterday 3 citizens were denounced for lukewarm applause during a reading of Robespierre's latest speech. You edge away from Pierre, just in case counter-revolution is contagious. The meeting drags on for hours, with speakers competing to demonstrate their revolutionary credentials through increasingly extreme proposals. By the time you're finally released, it's well past dark, and your stomach is reminding you that political fervor isn't nutritionally adequate. These section assemblies were the grassroots political force of the revolution, particularly after universal male suffrage was introduced in 1792. However, the practical reality of evening meetings meant that only those without evening work obligations could attend, regularly creating a political class of artisans and small shopkeepers who dominated local politics. By 1793, some sections were requiring civic certificates, proving regular attendance at meetings before citizens could receive bread rations, turning political participation from a right into a survival requirement. If you're fortunate enough to avoid section duties tonight, perhaps you'll indulge in some revolutionary entertainment. The theatres of Paris have been transformed into civic spaces where carefully censored plays promote Republican values. Forget subtle artistic expression, the Committee of Public Safety prefers its propaganda delivered with the subtlety of a guillotine blade. Popular performances include The Last Judgment of Kings and The People's Friend, works so heavy-handed they make Soviet theatre look nuanced. Maybe you'll stop by a café, true engine of revolutionary politics. Paris boasted around 1,800 cafes during this period, serving as informal political clubs where news, rumors, and conspiracy theories circulated faster than the watered-down wine. The smoke-filled rooms buzz with conversation carefully calibrated to be just revolutionary enough, too moderate, and you're a suspected royalist, too extreme, and you might be an agent provocateur. It's a rhetorical tightrope walk performed after a day of exhausting labor, with your neck as the prize for balance. As you finally trudge home through darkening streets, you pass one of Paris's new revolutionary street names. The former Rue Royale, now Rue de la Révolution, Rue Saint-Augustin, converted to Rue Molière. Even geography must be purged of counter-revolutionary associations. The streets are poorly lit, with oil lamps at major intersections providing tiny islands of dim light in an ocean of urban darkness. You navigate by memory and luck, hoping to avoid open sewers, muggers, and revolutionary patrols checking papers. You finally reach your building, climbing creaking stairs that threaten collapse with every step. Your room awaits, exactly as you left it, but somehow even more depressing in the fading evening light. Time for dinner, your third exciting bread experience of the day, perhaps accompanied by a thin vegetable soup if you're exceptionally lucky. Meat is a distant memory. Wine is increasingly scarce, and even salt is expensive due to revolutionary removal of the hated gabelle tax, which paradoxically disrupted salt distribution systems. As you chew your evening meal, The fleas that have been your constant companions all day continue their feast as well. You're essentially a walking buffet for Paris's most successful parasite population. The twilight hours bring their friends the bedbugs out to play, warming up for their nightly blood-drawing festivities. Between the vermin, the hunger, and the fear of a midnight knock from the Committee of Surveillance, it's going to be another restful night in the glorious Republic of Virtue. Night has fallen on revolutionary Paris, bringing blessed darkness to hide the city's squalor, but revealing new terrors to replace the daytime variety. The city after dark is a medieval nightmare, with revolutionary Tremingza, perfect setting for the horror story that is your continued existence. With no streetlights worthy of the name, darkness is nearly absolute, except for the occasional lantern carried by night watchmen or revolutionary patrols. The wealthier citizens might carry their own lanterns, immediately marking themselves as potential targets for both thieves and political denunciations. Nothing says, "I might have aristocratic sympathies," quite like being able to see where you're walking. The sounds of the city change at night. The daytime cacophony of shouting vendors, rumbling carts, and revolutionary speeches gives way to distant arguments, drunken singing from cafes, and the occasional scream which might be murder or just someone stepping into an open sewer. Either way, no one investigates. The revolutionary police force is too busy hunting political enemies to worry about mere criminals. Your tiny room offers little protection from the night. The walls are thin enough to hear your neighbor's every bodily function, political argument, and flea-induced scratching session. The window, if you're fortunate enough to have one, closes imperfectly, allowing both frigid air and the city's aromas to seep in. Your mattress, stuffed with straw that hasn't been changed since the storming of the Bastille, rustles with the movement of its many residents. They're not paying rent, but they are collecting their nightly blood tax. If nature calls during the night, and given your diet of questionable bread and contaminated water, it almost certainly will you have the chamber pot experience to look forward to. In the dark, you fumble for the ceramic vessel, hoping it's where you remember and not already full from previous use. The alternative is navigating pitch-black stairs to the communal latrine in the courtyard, risking broken bones, robbery, or stepping in what your neighbors missed in their own nocturnal wanderings. Sleep, when it comes, is a fractured thing interrupted by vermin, noise, digestive distress, and perhaps the most terrifying sound in revolutionary Paris: boots on the stairs at midnight. The Committee of Surveillance prefers night arrests, arriving with lanterns and tricolour sashes to drag suspected counter-revolutionaries from their beds. Every unexpected noise might be the patrol coming for you, or your neighbor, or the entire building. This state of perpetual anxiety isn't just psychological torture, it's civic duty. For those with the means and courage to venture out, Paris offers a shadow world of illicit pleasures. Underground royalist clubs meet in secret, gambling houses operate behind unmarked doors, and prostitution officially condemned by revolutionary moralists flourishes in the darkness. The famous Palais Royal, once a center of revolutionary agitation, transforms at night into a marketplace of vices, where anything and anyone can be bought for the right price. The revolution may have overthrown the monarchy, but it barely dented the world's oldest profession. The revolutionary calendar's 10-day work week has disrupted traditional patterns of nightlife. The 1 day in 10 break, known as the Decade, was meant to replace Sunday as a day of rest. In reality, many Parisians resisted this change, creating an underground observance of both systems. This effectively created a surveillance opportunity those resting on Sundays might be harboring religious sympathies, a dangerous counter-revolutionary tendency. Even your sleep schedule could be politically suspect. Night in revolutionary Paris was particularly dangerous for those in prison. The notorious September massacres of 1792 occurred primarily at night, when vigilante mobs broke into prisons and executed supposed enemies of the revolution without trial. Nearly 400 prisoners were killed in a week of bloodshed that foreshadowed the institutional terror to come. For those unfortunate enough to be imprisoned, and by 1794, Paris prisons held around 80 inmates in spaces designed for 2. 0 each night brought the possibility that they would be next. If you're lucky enough to drift into sleep despite the symphony of urban nightmares, your dreams are likely populated by the day's anxieties, food shortages, political denunciations, and the increasingly common sight of tumbrils carrying the condemned to execution. The guillotine might rest at night, but its shadow never leaves the revolutionary imagination. The pre-dawn hours bring their own special misery. The temperature drops further, penetrating your threadbare blanket. Your body, malnourished and exhausted, struggles to generate enough heat. The chronic cough you've developed, perhaps tuberculosis, perhaps just the body's natural response to breathing revolutionary air, wakens you and your neighbors. Soon the church bells will ring again, marking another day of liberty, equality, and fraternity in a city where all three concepts have been redefined at blade point. But at least the fleas have enjoyed a satisfying night. While you tossed and turned on your revolutionary palate, they've been living their best lives, reproducing enthusiastically, and preparing a new generation to experience the glories of the Republic. Their commitment to equality is admirable. They'll drink the blood of sans-culottes and aristocrats with equal enthusiasm. True revolutionary heroes, these parasites. As the first grey light of dawn filters through your window, you face another day in the workers' paradise of revolutionary France, assuming you haven't been denounced, arrested, or drafted into the Revolutionary Army overnight. Time to rise and shine, citizen. The Republic of Virtue awaits, whether you're ready or not. Welcome back to consciousness, citizen. Another glorious day in revolutionary France awaits your bleary-eyed, flea-bitten, malnourished self. Let's see what fresh torments the Republic of Virtue has prepared for your second day of alleged liberty. This morning begins much like yesterday, an orchestra of aches, reminding you of your body's various betrayals. That persistent cough has evolved overnight, bringing up interesting new colors from your lungs. Is it tuberculosis, pneumonia, or just the standard Parisian respiratory response to breathing air that's more particulate than oxygen? Medical science won't have an answer for another century, so you'll just have to wait and see which disease kills you first. Your morning ablutions remain exactly as inadequate as yesterday. You splash a bit of cold water on your face from a basin that's developing its own ecosystem, run fingers through hair that could house a family of field mice, and consider your clothing options. Will it be yesterday's filthy outfit, or the even filthier alternative? Such choices define revolutionary freedom. But today has a special feature that sets it apart from the monotonous misery of regular Daysits Decady, the 10th day of the revolutionary week, and your state-sanctioned day of rest. Don't get too excited. Rest in revolutionary Paris means mandatory attendance at civic festivals designed to elevate your revolutionary consciousness through the subtle medium of exhausting choreographed pageantry. Your stomach growls with familiar emptiness as you head out, joining streams of citizens converging on the local Temple of Reason for today's festival of something appropriately abstract and virtuous. The revolutionary calendar instituted 36 festivals annually, celebrating concepts like truth, stoicism, and industry. Today might be the Festival of Labor, ironic on your day off, the Festival of Youth, celebrating children who haven't yet died of revolutionary diseases, or perhaps the Festival of Reason itself, featuring speeches so tedious they make the guillotine seem merciful. The former church has been transformed for the occasion. Religious imagery is covered with Republican symbol tricolor bunting. Phrygian caps, fasces, and wreaths of oak leaves create a decor style best described as aggressive patriotism. A plaster mountain has been constructed at the former altar representing the Montagnards, the radical faction controlling the convention. The message isn't subtle. Politics has replaced religion as the new faith of revolutionary France. You join your fellow citizens packed into uncomfortable pews for hours of speeches, patriotic songs, and tableaux vivants performed by local children dressed as allegorical virtues. The children look terrified, the audience looks bored, but everyone maintains expressions of appropriate revolutionary enthusiasm. The crowd periodically erupts into mandatory cheers and applause, particularly when the local Jacobin representative mentions Robespierre or the elimination of enemies of the Republic. These civic festivals were designed by revolutionary ideologues to replace religious observances and create a new Republican culture. Jacques-Louis David, the premier artist of the Revolution, personally designed many festival elements, creating a revolutionary aesthetic that borrowed heavily from Roman republicanism. The festival program typically included flag waving, cannon fire, military parades, symbolic plantings of liberty trees, and hours of speeches using the word citizen approximately 3 times per sentence. The children's performances are particularly uncomfortable. Young girls in white dresses represent liberty, boys in tricolor sashes portray equality, and the smallest children embody various Republican virtues. Their parents beam with nervous pride after all. Their children's convincing performances as revolutionary symbols might provide some insurance against denunciation. Nothing demonstrates political reliability like offering your offspring as props in state pageantry. After 3 hours of rhetoric, your legs numb from sitting and your mind numb from repetitive propaganda, the formal ceremony concludes. Now comes the festive part communal meals set up on long tables in the square outside. These fraternal banquets are meant to embody equality, though the food remains just as scarce as ever. You join neighbors in breaking the same terrible bread, perhaps with the luxury addition of thin soup and watered wine. The conversation remains carefully, exhaustingly politicommenting on the weather could be interpreted as criticism of the revolutionary government if you sound too negative about the rain. Your fleas have enjoyed the festival too, networking enthusiastically with the parasites of your fellow citizens during the close-packed ceremony. They've probably exchanged typhus along with revolutionary ideals, making these civic gatherings effective vectors for disease, as well as Republican virtues. The lice in your hair have invited friends from neighboring scalps, creating their own little committee of public safety beneath your liberty cap. As the afternoon wears on, the celebration continues with dancing to revolutionary tunes played by the local militia band. The Carmagnolia popular revolutionary dance forms spontaneously, creating circles of citizens hopping and turning while singing increasingly slurred lyrics about aristocrats on lampposts. Participation isn't technically mandatory, but standing aside might suggest a lack of revolutionary spirit. So you join in, your exhausted body protesting each patriotic hop, while maintaining a grimacing smile that might pass for revolutionary fervor from a distance. All this forced festivity serves a deadly serious purpose. The revolutionary government recognized that controlling public celebrations meant controlling public sentiment. By replacing religious holidays with civic ones, traditional community rituals with political pageantry, they sought to remake not just the state, but the souls of citizens. Your participation isn't just entertainment, it's a performance of loyalty in a time when the wrong facial expression could be fatal. As the civic festival finally winds down, you face the ironic reality that your one day of rest has been more exhausting than regular work. At least tomorrow you'll return to the comparative peace of backbreaking labor without mandatory choreography. But before this day in revolutionary France concludes, there's one more quintessential experience awaiting. The crowd's movement is shifting, drawing everyone toward the Place de la Révolution. There's a certain electricity in the air, a macabre anticipation that can only mean one thing: it's execution o'clock. Today's revolutionary entertainment features the ultimate one-time performance of selected enemies of the Republic. You could avoid this spectacle, but attendance's practically mandatory absence might suggest sympathy for the condemned. Besides, public executions are revolutionary Paris's most popular form of entertainment, drawing crowds that would make modern sporting events jealous. Think of it as Netflix for the 18th century, except with real blood and a much more engaged audience. The streets fill with citizens heading toward the former place Louis XV, now appropriately renamed for the revolution it serves. This massive square has witnessed the execution of King Louis XVI himself in January 1793, and now serves as the primary stage for the Theatre of Terror. The procession of tumbrils open carts transporting the condemned winds slowly through the streets, giving citizens ample opportunity to jeer, throw garbage, or simply stare at today's selection of traitors. You find a spot in the crowd, not too close. Blood spatter is notoriously difficult to remove from 18th century fabrics, but not too far back. Looking insufficiently interested is suspicious. The guillotine stands at the center of the square, a surprisingly simple wooden structure with a distinctive angled blade suspended at the top. Designed as a humane execution method by Dr. Joseph Ignace Guillotin, who ironically opposed the death penalty, it has become the revolution's most potent symbol and most efficient tool. The condemned arrive, as many as 50 on busy days during the height of the terror. Some face their fate with dignified resignation, others with terrified pleading. A few defiantly shout, "Vive le Roi!" or other counter-revolutionary sentiments, while others proclaim their revolutionary credentials to the end. But I voted for the death of the king. The revolution, famously eating its children, makes no distinction. The executions proceed with industrial efficiency. Charles-Henri Sanson, Paris's chief executioner, a family business passed down since 1684, has reduced the process to an assembly line of death. With a team of 4 assistants, he can process an execution every 2 minutes. At the height of the terror in the summer of 1794, they were beheading an average of 30 people daily, Paris's most efficient workers by far. The sound of the blade dropping becomes a rhythmic percussion accompanying the day, along with the crowd's reactions, cheers, gasps, the occasional shocked silence when someone recognizable loses their head. The National Razor, as it's colloquially known, doesn't discriminate between aristocrat and revolutionary, young and old, male and female. During the terror's 14 months, its victims included Marie Antoinette, revolutionary leaders Danton and Hébert, the pioneering chemist Lavoisier, prompting the comment, "The Republic needs no scientists," and thousands of ordinary citizens whose revolutionary credentials were found lacking. Women knit while watching the infamous tricoteuses immortalized in Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities. Children play nearby, occasionally pausing to watch the spectacle. Vendors sell refreshments, pamphlets, and souvenirs. It's part political ritual, part public entertainment, carefully calibrated to normalize revolutionary justice while warning potential dissidents. The crowd's reaction has evolved since the early days of the revolution. The execution of the king in January 1793 drew tens of thousands in nervous, relatively silent observation. By 1794, daily executions have created a routine familiarity. Some spectators are passionate participants, others are there from obligation or morbid curiosity, and an increasing number show signs of what contemporary observers called guillotine fatigue. After each execution, Sanson, or an assistant, holds up the severed head for the crowd's approval, a moment captured in countless contemporary engravings. Folk belief held that consciousness remained for several seconds after decapitation, allowing the victim to hear the crowd's reaction to their demise. Modern medical science suggests this might actually be possible, giving each victim a final, horrifying glimpse of revolutionary justice from a new perspective. The ground around the guillotine is soaked with blood despite efforts to catch it in baskets lined with lead. The smell is metallic, organic, nauseating, especially on hot summer days when executions have been running since morning. By 1794, the original execution site had to be moved from Place de la Révolution to the eastern edge of the city because nearby residents complained about the stench and the contamination of their water wells with blood. Revolutionary justice may be swift, but it's not particularly sanitary. When the day's executions finally conclude, the crowd disperses slowly, discussing the condemned's final moments with the critical assessment of theater reviewers. Did you see how Citizen Dupont trembled? Clearly guilty. The widow Bertrand maintained her dignity. Perhaps she was innocent after all. It's political discourse with the highest possible stakes, where today's commentator might become tomorrow's main attraction. You walk away from the square with the day's images burned into your memory, your revolutionary fervor either reinforced or privately questioned. The spectacle serves its purpose a reminder that the revolution demands not just obedience but enthusiasm, not just compliance but active participation in its most extreme measures. As you head back toward your squalid lodgings, you pass patriotic graffiti declaring Liberté, égalité, fraternité, ou la mort. Liberty, equality, fraternity, or death. The or death part seems less like an alternative and more like an inevitable conclusion. Evening approaches in revolutionary Paris, bringing another night of fitful sleep, parasitic companionship, and the persistent fear that tomorrow might find you on the wrong side of Citizen Sanson's efficient machine. But take heart, only 9 more working days until your next mandatory festival of revolutionary joy. You've survived another day in revolutionary France. Congratulations are technically in order, though perhaps condolences would be more appropriate. As you drag your exhausted, malnourished body back to your miserable lodgings, let's consider what tomorrow might bring in this workers' paradise of perpetual suspicion. Morning will arrive with its usual cruelties, the aches, the hunger, the lice that have now established their own revolutionary committee in your unwashed hair. But beyond these constants lurk the special anxieties that make revolutionary France such a uniquely terrible place to exist. Will tomorrow be the day your name appears on a denunciation list? Will you be the one chosen for the next patriotic sacrifice to feed the national raiser's insatiable appetite? The terror functions precisely because of this uncertainty. Records show that approximately 0 people were officially executed during the terror, with perhaps twice that number dying in prison without trial. But the real masterpiece of revolutionary control was making 25 million French citizens live in constant fear that they might be next. It's psychological warfare elevated to an art form, with your mind as both battlefield and victim. Every interaction carries potentially fatal consequence. That neighbor who eyes your slightly less meager bread rationings, he memorizing details for a denunciation? The local sans-culotte who didn't return your enthusiastic citizen? Greeting this morning is he noting your name for the committee of surveillance? The revolutionary slogans you've dutifully memorized there, they already outdated, marking you as suspiciously behind on the latest approved revolutionary thought. Your political literacy must evolve daily to survive. Yesterday's revolutionary heroes might be today's traitors to the Republic. The Girondins, once revolutionary leaders, were purged by the more radical Montagnards. The Hébertists, extremist revolutionaries, were executed by Robespierre for being insufficiently virtuous. Danton, one of the revolution's architects, lost his head for suggesting moderation. In this political environment, yesterday's correct opinion might be tomorrow's capital offense. Better memorize those revolutionary newspapers. Your life depends on staying current with the ever-shifting party line. The domestic sphere offers no refuge from revolutionary politics. Children are encouraged to report counter-revolutionary sentiments expressed by parents. Servants inform on masters, wives on husbands, students on teachers. The revolution has invaded the most intimate spaces, making privacy itself suspect. Even your dreams aren't safe. Talking in your sleep could provide evidence against you, assuming your flea-ridden bunkmates are listening carefully enough to report your unconscious treasons. Tomorrow's weather forecast: cloudy with a chance of sudden political catastrophe. Or perhaps nothing will happen at all. You'll simply endure another day of grinding poverty, terrible food, and the gnawing anxiety that has become your constant companion. This uncertainty is the true genius of the terror, not knowing whether to fear the spectacular or the mundane, the guillotine, or just more of the same endless revolutionary misery. Sleep now, citizen, if the fleas and fear permit. Tomorrow awaits with its own unique blend of revolutionary horrors, designed specifically for you. Liberty, equality, fraternity, and anxiety. The unspoken fourth pillar of your new Republican existence. The revolution's impact extends far beyond the immediate miseries we've chronicled in your hypothetical day of 18th century French suffering. Let's zoom out from the fleas, stench, and guillotine blades to consider the broader historical significance of this catastrophic attempt at creating paradise through terror. The French Revolution pioneered the concept of political modernity, establishing that traditional governments could be completely overthrown and replaced with systems based on abstract principles. This was simultaneously humanity's most inspiring political innovation and its most terrifying, depending entirely on whether you're reading about it in a comfortable classroom or experiencing it firsthand as your neighbors denounce you for having suspiciously clean hands. Revolutionary France introduced the metric system, replacing the confusing patchwork of local measurements with a standardized, rational system. Finally, a consistent way to measure the distance to the guillotine, the weight of your inadequate bread ration, and the volume of blood flowing through Paris gutters. Progress comes in many forms, including decimal-based measurements of your suffering. The revolution attempted to rationalize everything, even time itself. The revolutionary calendar's 10-day weeks, 30-day months, and nature-themed names, Thermidor for heat, Brumaire for fog, Fructidor for fruit, represented an ambitious attempt to reform human experience from the ground up. Like many revolutionary innovations, it proved that just because something can be designed more rationally doesn't mean humans will accept it. The calendar lasted 12 years before Napoleon wisely returned to the 7-day week that human biology seems to prefer. Perhaps the revolution's most enduring legacy was its template for modern political ideologies. The concepts of left and right originated in the seating arrangements of the National Assembly, with radicals sitting on the left and conservatives on the right. The revolution spawned competing visions of society that would battle throughout the following centuries: conservative traditionalism, liberal democracy, radical republicanism, and authoritarian populism all trace their DNA back to the passionate debates and bloody executions of 1790s France. The revolution's failure to achieve its lofty aims without descending into terror became history's first warning about the dangers of utopian politics. The pattern established idealistic beginnings, radicalization, purges of insufficiently pure revolutionaries, eventual military dictatorship would repeat throughout modern history. Robespierre's France became the template for revolutionary excesses from Russia to Cambodia, proof that the road to hell is most efficiently paved with absolutist moral certainty. Women's rights emerged as a revolutionary concept, with pioneers like Olympe de Gouges publishing The Declaration of the Rights of Woman and the Female Citizen in 1791. Her reward for this pioneering feminism? A trip to the guillotine in 1793, charged with counter-revolutionary tendencies. The revolution was progressive enough to articulate women's equality, but traditional enough to execute women who took that equality seriously. Modern nationalism with its flags, anthems, civic rituals, and military conscription was essentially invented by the French Revolution. The Marseillaise, revolutionary cockades, Bastille Day celebrations, and the Levée en masse, the first modern mass conscription, created the template for national identity that countries worldwide would adopt. The revolution transformed subjects into citizens, giving them both new rights and new obligations to die enthusiastically for abstract national ideals. Revolutionary France's relationship with religion established the modern concept of secularism, sometimes as principled separation of church and state, sometimes as outright hostility toward traditional faith. The revolution's dechristianization campaigns, with their renamed cathedrals, revolutionary calendars, and civic religions, demonstrated both the appeal and the dangers of attempting to replace transcendent faith with political enthusiasm. The revolutionaries pioneered modern propaganda techniques, understanding that controlling language meant controlling thought. The shift from monsieur to citizen, the ubiquitous tricolor cockades, the revolutionary posters and festival saul created a system where political loyalty needed constant visible performance. Modern totalitarian states would build directly on these foundations, perfecting techniques first tested in the crucible of revolutionary France. Finally, the revolution's most personal legacy was its demonstration that ordinary humans, bakers, lawyers, tailors, teachers, could become both perpetrators and victims of extraordinary historical brutality, often trading places within days. Revolutionary France revealed how thin the veneer of civilization can be, how quickly normal life can transform into a nightmare of denunciations, show trials, and mass executions, all while maintaining the bureaucratic paperwork and legal formalities that make horror appear legitimate. So congratulations, citizen. Your day of revolutionary misery has contributed to world historical changes that continue shaping global politics centuries later. Your fleas, your hunger, your fear of denunciation, all part of humanity's traumatic birth into political modernity. Aren't you fortunate to have participated, however unwillingly, in such a pivotal historical moment? Well, dear listener, our time machine has reached its destination, the end of a single wretched day in revolutionary France. It's time to return you to the comparative paradise of whatever year you're experiencing this little historical horror show from. Let's take a moment to appreciate what you're returning to. Air that doesn't smell like an open sewer, food that isn't adulterated with sawdust, and the blessed miracle of indoor plumbing. Your immune system isn't fighting a constant battle against dysentery, typhoid, and tuberculosis. Your body isn't host to multiple thriving ecosystems of parasites. And most reassuringly expressing the wrong opinion is unlikely to result in your head being removed from your shoulders for the entertainment of your neighbors. The next time you flush a toilet, take a hot shower, eat food that contains actual listed ingredients, or express a political opinion without scanning the room for revolutionary informants, perhaps spare a thought for your hypothetical 18th century counterpart. They're still there in revolutionary Paris, coughing blood into a filthy handkerchief while trying to remember today's approved revolutionary slogans. History is not just a parade of dates and treaties, it's the lived experience of actual humans who suffered through unimaginable conditions that we've sanitized into tidy textbook chapters. Revolutionary France wasn't just about liberty, equality, and fraternity. It was about hunger, fear, disease, and the terrifying capacity of idealistic humans to justify atrocity in service to abstract principles. So go hug your refrigerator, kiss your antibiotics, and give silent thanks that you're experiencing the French Revolution through this sleep-inducing monologue rather than first-hand. Your day in revolutionary France is over, but theirs continued day after miserable day, uncertainty piled upon uncertainty, until Robespierre himself finally met Madame Guillotine, and the Thermidorian reaction ended the worst excesses of the terror. Sleep well, modern citizen. Your bed is clean, your water is potable, and the only revolution you need to worry about is the turning of the earth that brings another day of comparative comfort and hygiene. Liberté, égalité. Modern plumbing, truly the best revolutionary slogan of all.